Welcome to the 1P versus 2P Podcast's 2016 Game of the Year Awards. Join us for our deliberations this month as we recap the biggest news of the year, unveil our top 10 Editor's Choice picks, our consensus Game of the Year, and more. It's Friday, December 2nd, 2016. This is the 1P versus 2P Podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray. We've got a lot to get through. So this first episode, week one, is going to cover our honors. It's not our Editor's Choice list yet, nor is it our consensus Game of the Year. We'll cover those in the following 3 weeks. But this time, we're going to talk about several categories. So let's run through the list. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and read them?
Right, so this year's honors include Best Surprise, Best Looking Game / Visual Style, Biggest Disappointment, the category we formerly called Worst Game, Best Mobile / Handheld Game, Best New Character, Best Gameplay Moment, Guilty Pleasure of the Year, Biggest / Most Important News Story, and finally, Worst Trend. All right, Taylor, let's start off with the first category of honors we have to get through, Best Surprise. This is the category we give to games that we either expected coming and were surprisingly really, really good, or games that came out of nowhere and really surprised us with how wonderful they are. Why don't you go down this list of our candidates?
Yeah, before I begin reading from this list, I want to go over how we make these awards. And if you've just joined us, if you didn't listen to last year's award episodes, what we do is we pick our top 3. We cut from this complete list, pick our top 3, give one overall winner for the award, and then 2 runners up. So here we go. For Best Surprise, we have Pokemon Go, Doom, Stardew Valley, Hitman, Devil Daggers, Picross 3D Round 2, Battlefield 1, Titanfall 2, World of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest Builders, and Pocket Card Jockey.
All right, Taylor, we have to start cutting some of these games. Of this list, the only game that I haven't played is Picross 3D Round 2, so I need for you to tell me why this deserves to be this year's Best Surprise.
So Nintendo dropped this game extremely quickly. This was right after their Nintendo Direct. I believe it was earlier this summer around E3 time. And you know what? Picross 3D, the original one on DS, was just amazing. Fantastic puzzle game. I love what they did with the Picross element there. Instead of making it like this 2D puzzle grid to solve, you're instead working with a cube to rotate and solve. And what Picross 3D Round 2 did was, this time it's a downloadable title only. It was not released as a physical cart, so you had to download it from the eShop. I believe it was $30 at launch, 30 or 35, I can't remember. But anyway, it added some new, very fun gameplay elements that I think really enhanced the experience. And that's why I think it was a big surprise here, because not only did Nintendo not tease it before, there were no rumors surrounding it, they all of a sudden dropped it. It was a very wonderful, wonderful surprise. And I find myself coming back to that game. Of all the handheld games that I played this year on my 3DS, that's the game I play most often. And the sheer amount of content in that game, I mean, I would say I'm about maybe somewhere between 5 to 10 hours in, and I'm still not done with the game. It's just packed with a ton of different challenges in there. I highly recommend it if you're a puzzle fan. And for those reasons, it's a huge surprise for me out of Nintendo.
Do you think that this game really brought in a lot of new fans? Because like you said, Nintendo kind of dropped it out of nowhere. And I think people who are really interested in Picross picked up on it. And that was like, oh my God, this is like a sequel to a game that, we've been clamoring for a long time, before you had to get like your Picross fix on like these free questionable apps, or you had to go back to Nintendo's previous release. Do you think that they put in a functionality, made it easier for newcomers who potentially could be interested in this? Because that's people like me, honestly.
I would say yes, but of course I'm biased as a huge fan, but I don't know. I think you're right. I don't think that it appealed to people who didn't play the first Picross 3D. I think you have to know going into it what it is. And at that price point for a digital title only, like, it's kind of cost prohibitive. I don't know. For me, it was a big surprise. Maybe not for the rest of us, especially for you. I know you didn't play the first one, so maybe it wasn't a surprise for you at all. I'm okay with cutting it because I think there are better candidates on this list. I just wanted to say my piece about it.
Okay, fair enough. You said your piece. It's a surprise, but it's definitely not our best surprise. All right, now it's your turn to cut one of mine. What do you think doesn't belong in this list?
Well, I'm going to have to say Hitman. Look, here's the thing, and we'll get into this in the coming episodes because I personally love Hitman. I really love it. I love the new features it has, the gameplay overall. It's the best Hitman game to date in the entire series. I really like it a lot. For me, though, I just don't think it was a big surprise. The only surprise here is the way in which it was released. Initially, I think it was Square Enix decided that they were taking pre-orders for physical editions for a complete copy, and they decided, no, wait a minute, we're going to develop some DLC. We're going to release this piecemeal, throughout several months throughout the year. And by the end of the year, we're going to have a complete first season that we can bundle later on. So that was kind of a weird surprise. And what they ended up doing was canceling all those pre-orders for all the physical editions that people made on Amazon, Best Buy, whatever. So I thought that was very strange. That was the only surprise for me relating to this game.
I think for me, the surprising part of this game was how good it turned out to be for episodic content. We now see that publishers, Square is probably at the forefront of this, actually. Right around the time that they announced that they were doing that Final Fantasy VII remake, they kind of dropped this Hitman game at saying that they were going to do this episodically because the way that games get developed now is very expensive, and it's just easier to drop episodes the way the Telltale games have been, more like TV seasons where you get like a drip feed of content slowly over time. And at the end, if you decide to wait it out, you're rewarded by buying the entire season. And for me, Hitman is surprising because this kind of structure typically can either be really good, like with the Telltale games, sometimes with like The Walking Dead, but sometimes it can also be bad. And the structure hasn't been very conducive for like, when you say the game Hitman, typically Hitman games are assassination games where they're very linear. You play level to level. You can kind of kill the targets and you can approach the targets in almost any way you want. But typically there's like a main story and it's kind of like crazy over the top. The kills are kind of crazy over the top. And it just, from the get-go, the conception of this idea that they were going to make this kind of game an episodic content game is just like, how is this going to work? And then they made it work. They've done a lot of great post-release support. They've launched a bunch of like elusive targets that reward people who bought the game early. For people who like us who bought the game when the season was more complete, we missed out on a lot of those elusive targets, but they seemed really exciting. You can go back and watch the videos. Like they got Gary Busey to be an elusive target. Like that's kind of crazy. The game is like super fun. It's way over the top. The kills are like hilariously funny. What's surprising about Hitman is that it's like the structure of it and the mechanics of it works so well within this kind of episodic content structure. And I can see where that might rub some people the wrong way. And for me, it was definitely a surprise, but I think I'm coming to see that I kind of agree with you. It was definitely very surprising, and we're definitely going to put it up Hitman as one of our top games this year for sure in other categories, but I don't think it can be one of the 3 best surprises this year.
Yeah, I just don't think it's in the spirit of how it was released, the structure of it. I don't think it's in the spirit of this award. For me, best surprise means it was either unexpected and it dropped and it was surprisingly good, or we were expecting it and it blew our expectations. Hitman, I don't know. Like, I think Hitman already comes with a lot of things packaged with it, right? In terms of like the hype, people's expectations about it. And that's why for me, it just wasn't a huge surprise. I don't think it's in the spirit of this award. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it.
Go ahead.
All right. What else do you think?
Oh boy, I really like the rest of the games on this list. All right, let's go for the easy cut. Let's cut Pokemon Go. I think that Pokemon Go is probably the best case for Nintendo's like mobile strategy going forward, right? They developed Miitomo, and that was okay for like the first 2 weeks, and then it kind of got very boring. They didn't do a lot of support for it. And then Pokemon Go kind of blew up. This is their second app that they've done. And to be fair, Nintendo really didn't develop this app. It was Niantic who had, experience previously with this kind of augmented reality type game. But by adding the Pokemon franchise, they got a lot of people interested in Pokemon again. It like revitalized this fan base, this 20-year-old fan base that was so excited. It was, this year is Pokemon's 20th anniversary. Everybody has phones now. Not a lot of people have DSs or 3DSs, or as much as Nintendo would hope. And like Pokemon Go was an entire like worldwide phenomenon, like for the first month and a half of it released. And it was a buggy Nintendo game. Like Nintendo typically doesn't release buggy games. And this was an extremely buggy game from launch. It still is kind of buggy. They just finally today released, you know, the nearby feature that they had been kind of beta testing before. And I've been playing it every day since its release. It's, for sure recaptivated my interest in the Pokemon franchise. It's probably single-handedly responsible for increasing the amount of pre-order sales for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokemon Go is just one of those like once in a decade video game phenomenons that really like penetrate the pop culture bubble. And it did so like worldwide. Like I went on my honeymoon to Japan and I couldn't find a single Japanese person of any stripe, of any age, who wasn't playing this game. It's crazy. And it's a testament to how strong the Pokemon brand really is and how fun, even if Pokemon Go isn't the greatest mobile game since sliced bread, how strong Pokemon is for people of all ages. Because at this point, if you're a Pokemon fan and if you played the original games, you know, I was like in middle school when the first Pokemon game came out, and Pokemon Go has totally like revitalized my interest in something that has been with me for 20 years.
Here's the Cliff Notes version for why it doesn't win Best Surprise. Because the gameplay itself, I think, is kind of shallow and weak. I think that it's missing a ton of features. I think it's extremely buggy. The launch was just a huge bungle that first week. I'll never forget that. To me, you know, like it was a surprise in how popular it became, but it was like a shooting star. It entered the pop culture and then exited very, very quickly. You know, download numbers just absolutely plummeted after the first month. So I think it's just one of those things where it hit the zeitgeist and then disappeared all of a sudden. And now you don't see people talking about it. I don't see anyone else on the streets. And both of us live in two major cities in DC and Chicago. I personally don't see anyone else playing it anymore. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but I don't think it wins the award because the game itself is kind of shallow. It's missing a lot of stuff that I think would have made it a ton better.
I agree, and I do think it is a promising first step for Nintendo. You know, they've said that they're developing Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing mobile games. They're releasing Super Mario Run here shortly in the next coming weeks, so we'll see how those do. But I think if Pokemon Go is kind of like the early access version of Nintendo's like app campaign, it's definitely a promising first step, but I agree with you that gameplay-wise, it's very shallow, and it just doesn't have the like long tail that we thought it might have. You know, so we'll see if they continue to support it, but I agree with you. Let's cut it for my best surprise.
All right, since we spent so much time on the first three that we cut, let's go over what's left on the list. We have Doom, Stardew Valley, Devil Daggers, Battlefield 1, Titanfall 2, World of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest Builders, and Pocket Card Jockey. You know what? We can approach this the other way in that we can pick our top three, our personal top three, so see where we meet in the middle, and then have that debate.
Sure.
So I think for you, I'm going to pick one for you that I think is a lock. Stardew Valley came out of absolutely nowhere. It's got a ton of fan support, a ton of developer support. I think that was a really, really true surprise.
You know me too well, Taylor. I think actually this Stardew Valley runs away with this best surprise category. We can talk about whether it actually does in a few minutes or not, but it's definitely one of the top three best surprises. It came out of nowhere. It was in early access, sort of. It was made by one guy, this guy Concerned Ape on Twitter. It was so successful. You know, now they're developing console versions of the game. He continues to support free patches that are actually like extensive gameplay tweaks and new systems and new characters to a game that is already chock full of a lot of features. It's a fantastic game, fantastic style, and like it kind of outdoes every single Harvest Moon-like game out there. If you're the kind of person like me who finds these kinds of games very relaxing, finds them as like soothing time killers, Stardew Valley is the best version of this kind of game. And it came out of nowhere. Like I bought it and I immediately sunk 90 hours into it, and I'm looking forward to actually, since my PC hard drive crashed and my farm got wiped, I'm looking forward to starting all over again, because this game is just so much fun to play, and it truly in the spirit of this award. Very surprising.
I didn't play this game, but I've read a lot about it, and it is extremely surprising of a game. For Harvest Moon, I would say that game, or excuse me, I should say that series has been kind of in a lull right now. It's sort of dwindling. The past few titles haven't been very memorable. I think where they were the most popular was when they were originally released on N64, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy. Those original titles, I think, still hold up to the test of time. And ever since then, you have a lot more titles. I just don't think people are playing them. Whereas something fan-made like Stardew Valley addresses the demand for Harvest Moon and, in fact, improves upon a lot of the gameplay elements, I think is astounding. And never mind that, you can talk about the art direction as well. I think the graphics, the way it looks, the visual style is fantastic. And again, this is from somebody who hasn't played the game. From the outside looking in, I can truly appreciate how big of a surprise it is. And I would agree with you, I could see it winning this award. So let's pick two other finalists here. I do want to cut two of these, Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2. To me, I think they were surprised at how great they were, how much of a critical success they were. They got very positive reviews overall. But then again, they're Battlefield and it's Titanfall. Like, these are huge, huge games, major franchises that are promoted very, very heavily by EA. This is a major, major publisher. Never mind who developed it, DICE and Respawn Entertainment. Like, they come with a lot of expectations and weight and hype behind them. I just don't think they're very surprising when they finally drop, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I was surprised by how much I liked actually both of these games. Battlefield, the last time I was captivated by a Battlefield game was Battlefield 3, and it's been a few games since then. They've since released Battlefield 4, Battlefield Hardline, both which kind of failed to capture any sort of critical imagination or player imagination for that matter. And they went back to the well with World War I, which we don't see a lot of like World War I based games, and then they like totally blew it out of the park. Battlefield 1 is a great multiplayer game. Single player campaign super weak. And, serves as more of a tutorial. I think the first level was kind of interesting. And then the places where that campaign goes, not very interesting. But I think overall Battlefield 1 is like a good game. I would definitely classify it as a good game. But I wouldn't call it surprising. Battlefield games typically get very polished. And EA is one of the biggest publishers on the planet. Of course, they're going to release like a decent multiplayer shooter. That's definitely way better than their closest competitor, Call of Duty this year. And I think for Titanfall 2's part, it's way better than the first game. It totally blew me out of the water about how good that game is, how good the multiplayer feels. And they included a single player campaign that has like some really good levels in it, a really like fun. It got some characters that are really surprisingly well written. Just like completely out of left field that I was expecting Titanfall 2 to be good, especially after the poor impressions from the early multiplayer beta. Titanfall 2 definitely a surprise, but I agree with you. Just like Battlefield 1, it should be cut from this list.
All right, now we have Doom, Devil Daggers, World of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest Builders, Pocket Card Jockey, and we have the lock in Stardew Valley.
All right, I think I'm going to cut Devil Daggers, and it hurts me to say that because Devil Daggers is the one game on this list that's a lot shorter than the rest of these games. Devil Daggers is a game that you can play in the span of 3 minutes, if you're lucky. Basically, it kind of came out of nowhere, and it's kind of a tribute to all these like arena-based shooters. I'd say it's more akin to like Unreal Tournament, and as far as how Twitch-based it is.
Yeah, how the strafing and shooting, the overall look, the graphical style to it, but ultimately it's a roguelike. Like, your goal is to try to survive as long as possible on a very small platform where you have enemies and things that are flying at you at all different directions. And it's in this diabolical style. It's like in this hellscape. And I just think it was very, very cool. I think it's a cult classic, though. So I don't think it reached that critical mass we like to see in a huge Best Surprise award. So yeah, I'm okay with cutting it. I had a great time with it, though.
I think for that also same reason, I also want to cut World of Final Fantasy. I think that's kind of the Final Fantasy game that nobody was really excited for. You looked at the announcement from E3, and it's like, oh, that's the kids' Final Fantasy game. It has this kind of chibi art style. They were kind of hinting that it was going to be very nostalgic, had a lot of previous Final Fantasy characters in it. And those games can kind of go one of two ways. It's either like completely fills their nostalgia, or the games are totally crappy. And World of Final Fantasy is not a crappy game. It's a good game. It's basically a Pokemon game. But I don't think it really caught a lot of people's attention. I think actually some of the characters in there are kind of annoying, but the gameplay is really solid. The combat is super fun. If you like any Final Fantasy game, you're gonna find something that you like in Worlds of Final Fantasy. And if you've been missing games like game franchises like Digimon or Monster Rancher, this game is totally a Pokemon-like, in which you collect monsters and you fight alongside them. And totally fun, totally surprised, but I don't think it's one of the top 3 best surprises this year.
Okay, so we have left Doom, Dragon Quest Builders, Pocket Card Jockey, and Stardew Valley as the lock so far. For me, Dragon Quest Builders, really, I mean, it's like a Minecraft clone. Like, why is it a surprise?
I think for me is that it's for a Minecraft clone, and there have been so many of these games on Steam. It's actually well done, and particularly from a hardcore JRPG franchise, like the last thing I would expect is this game's concept to be like actually pretty decent. And secretly, this game is actually like a Dark Cloud-like game. Basically, it's Minecraft with objectives. You're kind of given free form outside of the tutorial to build the towns and cities however you want, and they give you kind of the materials and recipes to do so. But then they give you like kind of objectives to kind of sort of work towards, and the game is structured in chapters, and every chapter leads up to a boss fight, much like how the traditional Dragon Quest JRPG games would go. And I'm a huge fan of Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2, and we haven't had those games in quite some time, and that, for me, is the reason why this game is on this list. I can concede that is kind of a niche audience and a little bit of an appeal. The Minecraft people are never going to go away from Minecraft. And I think the Dragon Quest people, I think this game is more for people who are fans of Dragon Quest games and are looking for something outside of the traditional Dragon Quest experience. And surprised they got like a really good game out of it. I am sad to see it go, but I think I'm going to have to cut it, even being a big fan of this game. I definitely am. It was on sale during Black Friday, and I'm super enjoying my time with it, but I think there are games on this list that are more deserving of this honor. Okay, so our finalists are Doom, Stardew Valley, and Pocket Card Jockey. I have no idea what Pocket Card Jockey is like, but I can speak to Doom a lot, and trust me, we will definitely cover it in our Editor's Choice and Game of the Year deliberations for sure. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. Just rest assured, Doom, has been this dormant franchise. Doom 3, BFG edition also, as it was remastered, was I think, an average to slightly above average game. I think it had a lot of misses. I don't think it captured the essence that the original Doom and Doom 2 did. But this one, oh my God, just out of nowhere, phenomenal single-player campaign. I think the best first-person shooter campaign I think I've ever played in terms of style, in terms of viscera, movement. It really captures the essence of Doom is all I can say about it. And it was just a big surprise because if you remember, and we've discussed this on our show before, Bethesda do not send out advanced review copies, and usually that signals that a publisher is not very confident in that game. That's one of the reasons why I think it contributes to how big of a surprise it was, because it had overwhelmingly glowing reviews. It had a multiplayer mode in it that people weren't expecting. I think it's a phenomenal title this year, and it's going to get its due in other awards. Now, whether or not it's the best surprise versus Stardew Valley and Pocket Card Jockey, I don't know, because I haven't played either of them. But talk to me about Pocket Card Jockey and what that game is like. So Pocket Card Jockey is basically a solitaire game, which I know, don't fall asleep already. Pocket Card Jockey is a solitaire game made by the folks who brought you Pokemon, Game Freak. And it's a solitaire game that's horse racing themed, which it might surprise you, but actually horse racing is very popular in Japan. And Pocket Card Jockey is a game with very many complicated systems and gameplay mechanics, but essentially what it is solitaire. You're playing a card game. What's surprising to me is how good and genuinely addicting this game is. From the Pokemon people, they don't make games outside of Pokemon. And all of a sudden this year, they decided to branch out, and Pocket Card Jockey is actually an extremely fun game for how complicated its tutorial is, just for how many systems you can layer onto one of the oldest games known to man. And like, Solitaire is an old people's game. Like, straight up, I'm turning 30 this year, and I don't understand fully how to play Solitaire normally, but Pocket Card Jockey actually taught me how to play Solitaire super well, and the horse racing trappings around it are actually super fun and are super involved. And to me, that was how surprising it was. It definitely deserves to be one of the top 3. I don't think it's going to beat Doom or Stardew Valley, but I definitely think it deserves to be one of these 3 candidates.
I agree in the sense that it's just that not many people have heard about this game. So, again, I don't think it wins the spirit of the award. You may like it personally, and I know it's a niche title there. I know they have huge fans in the Giant Bomb crew, the gaming journalists from giantbomb.com, huge fans of it. I think there's like a mini cult classic here. It was available on 3DS only? Is that right?
Right. Only available on 3DS.
Okay. So it's a small title, a bite-sized title, which may not have much depth to it, and is an handheld exclusive. So we're talking about a game that not a ton of people have experienced. It might have been better served if it was released on mobile. So I don't know. I don't think it can compete with Stardew Valley and Doom just by default. So as a default, I think it has to be one of the runners up for sure.
All right. So here's the case against Doom. And I'm saying this because I think Doom is one of my favorite games this year. The multiplayer mode in Doom is, as you described, Doom 3 BFG, average to above average. It doesn't do anything to reinvent the wheel like the single player campaign does. I think a remake of Doom is probably one of the riskiest things that you can do, because Doom is a beloved first person shooter franchise, basically the game that invented the genre. And Doom 3 did not set the world on fire and kind of like made that game super dormant in a lot of people's eyes. I think it was kind of the equivalent of like trying to make a movie based around Watchmen, right? It's this like thing that we put up as a totem. It's like one of the best games ever, one of the greatest like development stories. And then out of nowhere, Bethesda decides that after some bad multiplayer impressions to kind of just drop this game, doesn't give it any to game critics. And then people start playing it, and it's really fun. And it does exactly the thing you want a Doom remake to do. We talk about remakes and remasters all the time on this show, and talk about how usually they don't do enough or they're doing the wrong things. And this is like a perfect reimagining of Doom. However, I don't think it goes far enough on the multiplayer side. And frankly, like, to me, it was surprising how good Doom was. I'm not surprised that like a highly polished Bethesda game turns out to be good. Like, this is the thing that we want Skyrim to be like, right? We want Fallout to be like. Bethesda is like at the head of many of gaming's most storied franchises, and they could have so screwed it up with Doom. And the surprise there is that they didn't. They didn't screw it up. It's a great game. I think Stardew Valley, for me, is this year's best surprise because it just came out of nowhere. And like, it totally embodies the spirit of this category. It's a fantastic game. This is my pitch to you. Even if you don't like these types of games, these types of work simulators, please, please, please play Stardew Valley. If you don't like the farming, there's a dating sim element to it. If you don't like the dating sim element, there's like dungeon crawling in it. There's just so many like layers upon layers of gameplay mechanics in this game, and it's fantastic. It's pretty cheap right now, and the guy is continuing to add to this game. It's a game that you could probably play forever. It's awesome. It's addicting, and I totally think that's why this game deserves best surprise this year. Despite
Me not having played it, because I've heard so much about it and all the positive reviews surrounding it, I have to give it that award too. So I'm going to agree with you. Yeah, that Stardew Valley wins our best surprise for 2016, followed up with runners-up of Doom and Pocket Card Jockey. So congratulations to Stardew Valley. All right, let's move on to the next category, best looking game and visual style. So we don't call this best graphics for a number of different reasons, because best graphics can be an objective measure. So instead, what we did was pick a subjective measurement, which is what we think is a really neat and cool, innovative, perhaps, looking graphical style. Let's call it that, right? So best looking game or visual style. Let's read through the list of nominees. We have Overwatch, Super Hot, Abzu, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Sharp FE, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, No Man's Sky, Forza Horizon 3, Devil Daggers, Thumper, and Enter the Gungeon.
All right, so if I'm getting this category right, and I kind of designed this with you, so I do know that I have it right. This is not only best graphics, but this is also how well the graphics support the gameplay, right? This is a game that all its visual elements help explain the game's theme and genuinely add to the gameplay experience. So having said that, which one of these do you want to cut, Taylor?
Well, I added Uncharted 4 to this list, and I already want to cut it. And that's because, as I said, this isn't a game about best graphics, and this game looks absolutely stunning. Very lifelike, just gorgeous, gorgeous environments. I don't think it separates itself. It doesn't do anything new that Uncharted didn't already do in the series, and the other three that were included in that franchise. So for me, I think I have to cut it for that reason.
I agree, and I think for me, the one visual thing that actually detracts for me from Uncharted 4 is that they still have the yellow Assassin's Creed problem of this is where you climb, dummy.
Yeah.
all the white chalk in the games is kind of too much of a breadcrumb trail. If they did away with that, I think this game would actually be, for me, one of the top 3 candidates. But because they continue with that trope, I think I agree with you. It has to be cut from this list. All right, I'm going to cut one. I don't think No Man's Sky is the best looking game / visual style. We're going to get into No Man's Sky in another category we have, but I don't think this game visually is doing anything different than other games in the genre have even done. I think actually I preferred Spore's kind of chunky, blobby style as opposed to No Man's Sky kind of futuristic, space-like take on it.
Yeah, with a vintage sort of lens to it.
Yeah, and I actually think there's an early access game that does this kind of visual treatment better in a similar kind of setting. I think House of the Dying Sun does this kind of treatment a lot better. But yeah, I don't think visually No Man's Sky really speaks to me. I think some people like the game, and that's fine. But I don't think visually it's going to win any awards from us.
Talk to me about Abzu, because I didn't play that one.
I didn't play that game either, but from what I could tell, and I think that's actually why we should cut it, because the visual style wasn't interesting enough for us to get into it. But
True.
This is a game that's basically kind of like Echo the Dolphin. You're exploring kind of an underwater area, and it's just
as a
kind
scuba
of
diver, right?
As a scuba diver, it's very relaxing. It has kind of this very serene music. It looks beautiful, but I don't think it's doing anything different than Echo the Dolphin did many years ago on the Sega Genesis. And I think it's going to appear on a lot of other people's top 10 lists, but I don't think it belongs in our best looking game / visual style.
All right, now I'm already anxious and antsy and already want to get to our top 3 here, because I think we spent way too much time talking about each individual one. What are your top 3 for this category, personally?
I think for me, this category is Overwatch, Thumper, and Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE.
Okay, I'm with you on Overwatch, but my other 2 would have to be Super Hot and Enter the Gungeon. So on that note, we need to cut for Forza Horizon 3. We'll give it its due later. Phenomenal game, but not best looking game visual style. Devil Daggers also is cut.
Right, and I actually think Doom did Devil Daggers style much better.
All right, so now we've got to debate the rest of these. So far, we definitely have Overwatch. We have agreed on that so far. So that should be a lock. And we'll talk about why in a bit. But now we have left Overwatch, Super Hot, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Sharp FE, Thumper, and Enter the Gungeon.
Okay, so here's a case both for and against Super Hot. So Super Hot, very visually arresting. I think actually Super Hot's visual style is the thing that got most people interested in the game. Besides the fact that every time a level ends, it goes super hot, super hot.
Okay, well, we'll describe the art style.
Right. So Super Hot is a very minimalistic art style. It has kind of just a very simple color palette, basically 3 colors: white, red, and gray. It's kind of visually, it kind of looks very polygonal. It kind of looks like you entered the Matrix, and you're seeing like blocky shapes and textures and character models, and you're running around trying to destroy other polygonal character models. Visually very arresting. And then the other half of the game is basically you're in a command prompt. You're going in and out of the I don't know, let's call it the Matrix just for shorthand's sake.
Yeah, you're looking at a computer terminal, but you're entering this weird minimalistic, like you said, polygonal matrix to actually play the game.
Yeah, and I think for me that's the part of the game visually that's kind of cliche. And when I compare it to Thumper, the other game that I would classify as similar visually to Super Hot, Thumper is going for something completely different. Thumper is a rhythm game that is kind of like hallucinogenic. You look at it and you think, wow, this game is a lot like Fantasia. It's just like I'm playing this game and I am like tripping balls, man. This game visually is very intense. I know this isn't a category about the audio, but its visual style actually contributes to the gameplay quite a bit. And frankly, Thumper is available both in VR and not in VR. And I think if you have a VR headset, Thumper is a way more visually arresting experience. Super Hot, they are developing a VR version. The game actually alludes to the fact that you're playing a simulation of it, and there's actually a level where you kill yourself basically, and
spoiler alert. Jeez.
Well, sorry, this is a Game of the Year podcast, so we're gonna go into spoilers. But and you're wearing a VR headset in Super Hot, but you're not actually wearing a VR headset if you're playing the game right now. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I think you and I both have played Super Hot and really enjoy its visual style. I think Thumper does the visual style a little bit better. I don't know if I've made the case for that yet. Would you agree that Thumper is kind of going for the same thing, but maybe does it a little bit better?
The gameplay for Thumper is incredible. Like, it's a sort of on rails rhythm game. You know, you have to time your attacks to the beat of the music, but not only that, but also to just your environment. Like, it's just it's shocking. Like, I can't imagine anyone who suffers from epilepsy can play this game because of how much is going on around you. It's just this sort of very bizarre. You're playing like almost like the Scarab character on a rail, and attacks are coming at you from enemies that are off in the distance. And it's seemingly like it almost feels like an endless runner in the sense that you're constantly moving forward on screen, attacking like bosses and very bizarre enemies that are abstract and very difficult to describe, but just very weird, innovative. It's something I've like really, really never seen before. And it's all surrounded by this sort of black space. Like you're not focusing on anything but the Scarab in front of you, because beyond that, there's just emptiness, a vast emptiness. So very, very, very cool, very interesting, very neat. So yeah, I could see it being one of the top 3 here. So what we have left here: Overwatch, which is already a lock; Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Sharp FE; Thumper; and Enter the Gungeon. So okay, I'll agree with you about Thumper. We can add that. Super Hot, yes. If I haven't already said it, we can cut that. It is a little bit derivative. We've seen that kind of game before, that minimalist polygonal style. So it's just too much white, too much red, and then that's it. They're working with a very small color palette there. So here's the thing. I played Enter the Gungeon, and while I love the game's visual style, it's this, it's doing something that a lot of games have done for a while in appealing to that nostalgic sense, because it's, just straight up pixel graphics. It can be anywhere from 16 to 32-bit style graphics. It kind of reminds me of another roguelike game, Rogue Legacy. So yeah, it's a little derivative, but it's so creative in its environment and enemy design. So you're entering this dungeon and you're going through several different floors, and every enemy is either shaped, like there's something gun related there. So you're either fighting shotgun shells that are animated, you have like bazookas or bullets or whatever, And the bosses themselves are extremely cool. I can best describe the gameplay like it's like Smash TV meets Rogue Legacy. That's the best way I can describe it. It's a top-down shooter. You can play co-op. It's bullet hell. You're constantly dodging and maneuvering, trying to get as far as you can, as quickly as you can, without dying, with extremely limited health. It's very difficult, but it is nothing we haven't seen before. So I don't know. For 2016, we have some stiff competition here. So I think we can cut it at this point.
Yeah, I think the reason that Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE makes this list is because, first off, I should say visually, this game is anime as hell. This game is basically a Persona game with Fire Emblem characters in which it's a very standard dungeon crawling RPG. Gameplay wise, I don't think it's doing anything different than a lot of other games in the genre do. However, visually, it's got a lot going for it. If you like J-pop or anime, and if you like video games, there's a high chance that you like one or both of those things. This game is just like totally captures that oeuvre of like style. And it does it so well that I think for a game on a platform that a lot of people aren't going to play on the Wii U, this game looks super good. It's probably one of the better looking Wii U games out there. And it does everything right. It mashes up Fire Emblem with the kind of like Persona style monster design, and it's just like a really fun adventure. And like visually, that's like its strongest element. I definitely think it deserves to be one of the 3 games for this category. I don't think it wins, but I definitely think it deserves to be held up there for that reason alone.
Yeah, you know what? Like, you really talked me out of it. Like, I don't really care that much for the whole anime aesthetic, really. And you know what? Like, so this is a game that's a mashup of Fire Emblem and Persona, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
And it looks very similar to Persona 4 The Golden. Would you agree?
There are anime cutscenes. Visually, the town, the parts where you like explore town and crawl through dungeons is similar to Persona. I'd say the graphics are maybe a little bit of a step up because Persona 4 was originally a PS2 game. But yeah, it's similar.
All right. I don't know. It's just, I can't agree that it's the best looking for this year. For me, it's got to be between Overwatch and Thumper.
Okay, so
and we barely talked about Overwatch. We need to talk about that too.
Okay, so Overwatch, I think actually Overwatch is strong. One of Overwatch's many strong suits is that it has a Saturday morning cartoon look. Right, it's this team-based shooter that in the vein of a Team Fortress 2 like game. And I think it actually does the Team Fortress 2 cartoon style a lot better than Team Fortress 2. It's super fun. The characters really pop. All the character designs are really actually super fun. It's a diverse cast of characters across many different character classes. And visually, that the big looking, muscly, tough woman is going to be like a heavy character, right? The guy in the big suit of armor is also going to be a heavy. The weak-looking angel is going to be the healer type, right? Visually, it has kind of like an unspoken language about it that makes it very accessible to a lot of people who wouldn't probably be interested in this style of game because this style of game has been kind of like shot to death, right? Like the people who are still interested in Team Fortress 2, which is a game that's over a decade old at this point, are still playing that game. The other people are either went to Counter-Strike Go or kind of went more into the other direction of Call of Duty, which is more like military style browns and greens, right? And Overwatch completely goes the other direction with it. It's like, let's make shooters colorful again, right? And Overwatch, the level design, the characters, just everything about it screams Saturday morning cartoon. And just thematically, I think it does so well with its visuals that, to be honest with you, I think it probably wins this category, despite my very strong feelings about Thumper. Thumper is a very sensory overload kind of visual experience, on top of being an audio experience. But I think for me, the most cohesive package visually is Overwatch.
I'm glad you said that because I would agree with all those points. It's just super bright and super colorful. And we didn't even mention the skins and how phenomenal they look. Like, I know this is, these are things you unlock in game or you have to pay for, whatever. Just amazing. And what Blizzard has done with these, timed events, like Halloween special, for example, just amazing, incredible character models. And not only do the characters themselves look great, but just the levels themselves are so incredibly designed, and I think evoke the locales in which they take place, right? Like, there's an African level, there's a Mexican level, there's a Hollywood level. These things in the background, right, in the backdrop that we may not notice when we're playing online multiplayer shooters, I think they're a bit underappreciated. I really love what Overwatch does. I'm a huge fan of it. Thumper, for me, if the gameplay, I think, was a little bit more complex and advanced, if you could move off that rail and explore this empty space, if it was more of a, let's say, like Star Fox look to it, where you could move around in somewhat of a 3D space, I think it would be very interesting, because not only are you trying to comprehend sort of the like abstract monsters that you're looking at that sort of come out of the ether, that are shiny and flashing and whatever, but if you were to control yourself a little bit more, I think it would be a little more visually interesting, because there would be so much to look at that there would be very difficult to concentrate. I think it would add gameplay value to it myself. So I don't know. I think Overwatch, because of how much we've played of it, how much we've appreciated all the levels, all the characters, you name it, out of that game, it looks great. I don't have many complaints about it at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, all those things you said about Thumper, they could definitely do for a Thumper too. And I think if you're looking for a game in that style with a kind of like abstract nature, maybe check out Res Infinite. This year they added finally a new Area X, which is a level that is kind of a little bit more open world than the on-rail shooter that both Res and Thumper both are. But I agree with you. Overwatch should definitely win this category by a country mile. Visually, it's got a lot going for it. So Overwatch is this year's best looking game visual style 2016. Mark it.
And then we have our two runners up as Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE and Thumper.
All right, Taylor, let's talk about my favorite category to discuss, but actually probably the least fun to think about, because this is the biggest disappointment. We don't have a worst game, because the worst game, frankly, doesn't even belong on this list. It's so bad. But these are games. This category is devoted to games that we thought had something going for it, or are games that come from franchises that we frankly deserve a lot better than the games that we got out of them. And this list is long this year. I feel like for every great game we got this year, we got 3 bad ones. I'm going to read this list, and then I'm going to make this cut very easy for you. So this biggest disappointment, we have Street Fighter V, Star Fox Zero, Mighty Number 9, Trials of the Blood Dragon, We Happy Few, Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, Homefront The Revolution, Trackmania Turbo, Far Cry Primal, Metroid Prime Federation Force, Final Fantasy Explorers, Umbrella Corps, Mafia 3, Battleborn, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, No Man's Sky, Pac-Man Championship Edition 2, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Dangerous Golf, and finally, Quantum Break. All right, so Taylor, this list is a list of games that I'd classify as turds.
Yep.
These games are bad. There is a lot of badness here. I'm going to tell you the games that I played that made me not want to be a gamer anymore.
Oh, that's harsh.
Okay. Star Fox Zero definitely deserves to be on this list. Mighty Number 9 definitely deserves to be on this list. Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness also deserves to be on this list. I actually think for me, those are the 3 I would put up there. The other games are, to be sure, bad, but I don't think I had much expectations for them. Trackmania Turbo is probably the only one on this list that I'd probably say, like, hey, wait a minute. That game is probably okay. It's just not for us. Street Fighter V, I think, had a very disappointing launch. It continued to be disappointing throughout the rest of this year. I don't think it was the Street Fighter game that fans of that franchise are really looking for. And Capcom has said that they're committed to like a 10-year plan to Street Fighter V as like a fighting game platform. And frankly, that sucks. Like,
yeah.
They didn't launch with a single player campaign, no arcade mode. Versus at launch was super broken for the first month. Nobody could figure out the like account system that you could work for. Their like DLC plans got totally scrapped when they couldn't figure out how to implement a transaction system, whether it was going to be Zenny or real money or whatever. Oh my God, was that so bad. But I think once you actually get into the nitty gritty of actually fighting, Street Fighter V is actually like a fun game in versus. But it's not the best Street Fighter game.
You know what? I looked at this list and I saw Street Fighter V at the top that you read first, and I thought it would be the prohibitive runaway favorite for biggest disappointment for this year. That's to me. The rest of this list, I agree with you. Like, the rest of it we can cut. Like, they're all pretty bad, but we didn't have huge expectations for a lot of these. You know, I'm talking about Trials of the Blood Dragon, We Happy Few, Homefront, The Revolution, Trackmania Turbo, Far Cry Primal, Metroid Prime Federation Force, Final Fantasy Explorers, Umbrella Corps, Mafia 3, Battleborn, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, No Man's Sky. How could we leave No Man's Sky? We have to still deliberate about that game. For me, very big disappointment. Pac-Man Championship Edition 2, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Dangerous Golf, Quantum Break. These are the games that I feel safe in cutting.
All right, so let's have the debate. There are 5 games left on this list. We still have Street Fighter V, Star Fox Zero, Mighty Number 9, Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, and I swear if I have to read that one more time, and No Man's Sky. Okay, I think a lock for this category is Mighty Number 9.
Really? Really? I was going to say No Man's Sky.
Okay, Mighty Number 9 sucks so bad that it makes me retroactively wish that Mega Man wasn't a thing.
Oh, man. No, that can't be.
Mighty Number 9, okay. So it was this Kickstarter campaign, right? And it was like from the guy who made Mega Man, probably one of the biggest Kickstarters ever, right? When you look at, if you actually sit down and play through Mighty Number 9, you'll see in the credits they give the Kickstarter backers, every single person who gave money to that. Over 70,000 people gave money to fund Mighty Number 9. Okay. So they released this, it's like, okay, it's delayed. All right, a lot of games are delayed. It gets delayed again. Okay, that's not such a great sign. Typically at like 2 delays, we're like, okay, this game it's risky. 3 delays later, it's like the 5th time it's been delayed, they release a trailer for it. The trailer is bad. It has bad VO. This announcer who sounds like he could be doing cutting a cut rate WWF wrestling promo. It's bad. Visually, the game looks awful. The explosions look like the
cheese
worst
pizza slices is what I remember they looking like.
Yeah, terrible. I wrote an article about how bad visually a game, and it's like, okay, all right, this looks pretty bad. This is bad. and then you're like, but it could be like an okay Mega Man game, right? So it comes out, just top to bottom, Mighty Number 9 is a complete disaster. The tight gameplay that Mega Man, the Mega Man franchise to be known for isn't there. The controls are floaty, they're terrible. The combo system that they heavily promoted doesn't work very well, not very well communicated. The least offensive thing about it actually is the visuals. But it just read Mighty Number 9 top to bottom reads like dollar store version, not even dollar store version, 50-cent version of Mega Man. It's terrible. I played through the whole thing. It is, I don't want to say the S word, but it is a crappy game. The game is crap. It made me angry. I finished it. It's a very short experience, blissfully. And then on top of it, so it has a lot of voice acting in it. Voice acting is bad. But the voice actors are well-known voice actors. So I maybe it's the script that's bad. And it's just, oh God, I don't get angry about video games, but Mighty Number 9 made me angry about video games. To me, I'd rather play Duke Nukem Forever until the end of time before I'd ever touch Mighty Number 9 again. And then the credits, and of course, you finish you beat the final boss. It's totally lame, whatever. And then roll credits, and then Mega Ran, who you might be familiar with if you're into the chiptune scene, is kind of this well-known video game hip hop artist, rapper, and Mega Ran turns in this subpar performance, just a really crappy hip hop song about Mighty Number 9, where basically every 10 seconds he or one of the Kickstarter backers yells the word mighty. It is bad. It is just the cherry on top of a bad sundae. It's horrible. I'm sorry I had to go on a diatribe about this game, but I actually think it wins this category outright, despite the fact that No Man's Sky had such like a build-up about it. A lot of people felt like they were disappointed in the end product of that game.
A lot of people. Let's talk about the internet. I hear what you had to say about Mighty Number 9, but let me read you a couple headlines recently about No Man's Sky. So this is a couple months after it was originally released, okay? Investigation clears No Man's Sky of using misleading promotional materials, okay? So that's number one, all right? Here's another headline. No Man's Sky Foundation update review. Is it a good game yet? Okay. All right. Number 2, negative headline. Major headline that you're seeing at the top of Google search results. Number 3, No Man's Sky Steam reviews are up to mostly negative. And then, of course, all right, so never mind the commentary around the game. This game was just hyped for a couple of years by Sony, by Hello Games, by Sean Murray, the lead designer of No Man's Sky. He went on the E3 stage to demo the game, showed off some gameplay aspects that just physically weren't present in the final product. Okay. He went on Stephen Colbert, was describing multiplayer features that, again, were not there on release. In fact, if you look at the No Man's Sky subreddit, and this has been a major part of the fan backlash about this game, because up until the release, everyone was excited. Probably the most overwhelmingly hyped game I've ever seen in this industry, period. It's not even close. So all of a sudden, it gets released, and then within a couple of days, they start tallying up a list of features or promises by Hello Games or by Sean Murray, and on different outlets with footnotes. And I mean, I can't tell you how this, it's like Martin Luther's list of objections to the church. That's what it looked like. And this was about a video game. And this was a video game. This was a brand new IP franchise that had overwhelming previews. People were amazed at the art style, the gameplay. People were describing this thing as this endless space exploration. This might be the game to end all games. You could play this game infinitely because you could never, ever, in one lifetime, explore the entire universe and ever come across the same planet twice or the same creatures twice. And I had doubts. I decided to play the game because I had to know. I just had to know. It's like you're feeling with Mighty Number 9, right? You didn't kickstart it, but you had to know. You right? This is like a Mega Man's legacy now in 2016. But I had to know about No Man's Sky. And we had Alex Marini on the podcast episode. And I just want to shout out to him. Thanks to him for giving us his take about it. And he was a fan, but he did say, quote, it wasn't for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Okay.
And I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. It's a huge disappointment for millions of people.
Okay, so I agree with you that it deserves to be on this list. I have no doubt it's a lock. I think the argument against it winning this category outright is that No Man's Sky reads to me like a lot of games get preview coverage and then they turn out to be what they say they are. Okay, fine. This is a very like worst case example of that, right? I think it's so bad that like Hello Games basically had to go into a spider hole and not talk about the game. And until they released this like foundation update, in most players' eyes is probably the beginning of where this game starts to like turn around, right? But it's not enough. I agree with you that like the changes that they've made to this game are not enough. However, to me, No Man's Sky reads like a very average game. It doesn't read to me like the worst thing put on disc. It is for sure a huge disappointment to the people who are super interested in the game, people who were excited about all its pre-release coverage. No doubt about that. But I think there are people who actually really enjoy No Man's Sky. I actually picked up this game on a Black Friday sale for $20 because I have to, like you said, I have to know. I haven't played it yet. But I only picked it up after finding out that they released this update. And I'm like, okay, I could be interested in that. And for $20, I don't have that much to lose.
Right. For context, by the way, this update adds base building so you can get yourself on a home planet and build up some buildings and, store materials, things like that. It's almost like Fallout 4's sort of like hometown, custom game mode right there, right? So
and
you have a home base.
Right. And let's do away with the notion that any game ever is ever going to be the one infinite desert island game that you're going to play forever, because No Man's Sky was never going to be that. No game is ever going to be that. My favorite games of all time, I eventually get sick of and I want to play something else. No game is ever going to meet those expectations. I think No Man's Sky was partially a victim of way outsized expectations that it could never hope to meet. I definitely agree that it belongs as the biggest disappointment, and it's a lock as one of the three candidates. That having said, we've talked about this category for a long time, and I want to move on to better categories. So let's pick our third lock. So the other games on this list are Street Fighter V, Star Fox Zero, and Star Ocean: Integrity and Faithlessness. For me, I reviewed Star Fox Zero for the site. It was one of the first reviews we ran. I actually think it was our second review. And Star Fox Zero is a bad game. It is a bad redo of Star Fox 64. It is awful. The controls are bad. Everything about the pre-release coverage of that game and the trailers that Nintendo released for E3 said, like, okay, we're going to go back to the well on Star Fox. Star Fox hasn't been good in a long time. We've released a lot of crappy Star Fox games that people didn't like. We get it. People just like Star Fox on the SNES, and people just like Star Fox 64. The other Star Fox games, they suck. Okay, fine. We're going back to the well. So then they release Star Fox Zero, and they say that they're going to use the gamepad controls. Okay, let's hope that they don't do a second screen. So this pre-release coverage comes out, and oh no, it uses second screen. But they say they've heard the critics that they're going to figure out another way to play this game. Game comes out, they don't figure out another way to play this game. The camera controls for Star Fox Zero and the way that game controls single-handedly sinks it as one of the worst games I've ever played. It's bad. And on top of it, it's like, it's not a fun Star Fox game. Like, it basically does all the same story beats that, like, Star Fox 64 did. And, like, that's not what Star Fox fans are looking for. It's not a fun, like, arcade aerial simulator. Like, I'd rather play any other, like, air combat simulator.
Oh, like Ace Combat, for example.
Like Ace Combat, right. And that's not typically how I feel about this genre of game. Star Fox 64 is, like, for me, one of the top 10 games of my childhood. They did such a disservice to it with Star Fox, one of their, like, flagship franchises with Star Fox Zero. And then on top of it, as kind of like a pre-apology, they released Star Fox Guard, which is kind of like a mini game that's packaged in with Star Fox Zero, and that's actually a good game. But it's kind of this like apology. It's like, well, Star Fox Zero is a bad game, but you don't know that going into this package. So we're going to include this other second game that's a lot better and takes advantage of the Wii U's like unique controller perspective. And the main game just sucks. And it doesn't have online, and there's like no multiplayer mode. It's a very like short single player camp. It's bad. It's bad. There's no other way to say it. Star Fox Zero is a bad game. And I think for those reasons, I think the three contenders here are Star Fox Zero, Mighty Number 9, and No Man's Sky for biggest disappointment. I just think when you sit down and you play Street Fighter V, it's not a bad game. A lot of the trappings around Street Fighter V, I agree with you, are awful, are bad.
Well, it launched without a single-player campaign, which, from a lot of people, you know what? Like, they're just not involved in the online fighting scene. They just want to play local multiplayer, and they want to play a story mode with every character. With other fighting game franchises like Mortal Kombat, where you see the story is actually very good, the single player is phenomenal, the challenges are great, and it just launches without that completely. Like, why would you pay full price for this game? I think it was released at $60, was it not? And then it just plummeted in price.
And on top of it, the PC version is even more of a crappy situation if you bought that version. Capcom said it was promising that you could play cross-platform, PC, PS4, no problem. And then the PC version is not good. And then they try to make good on it. And then they end up the version of that game with the DRM on it. The DRM actually bungles a lot of their updates and a lot of the matchmaking. It's just, I think Street Fighter V is disappointing.
But you don't think it beats out the rest of these? Like, I could see Mighty Number 9, Star Fox Zero, and No Man's Sky, but for me, I could swap out Star Fox Zero with Street Fighter V. Star Ocean, Integrity and Faithlessness, we don't need to get into, okay? It's a below average game.
That's a below average game, but that's par for the course for Star Ocean at this point. Just play Star Ocean 2 if you really like Star Ocean games.
Second story. Yep.
All right. So the debate here is Street Fighter V or Star Fox Zero. You haven't played Star Fox Zero. It's so bad.
I read your review on our site. What more do I need?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So Street Fighter V, they did eventually add the single player campaign, which was also bad. but I think, okay, of these games, the potential for the one of here that could like potentially like rise up from the muck and actually be like halfway decent. The only game of this list is Street Fighter V. Mm-hmm. I don't see No Man's Sky suddenly tomorrow being like a fantastic game of the generation. I don't see that case with Mighty Number 9. I definitely don't see the case with Star Fox Zero. I could see Capcom eventually releasing a good patch for Street Fighter V that does everything you want, or doing like a Street Fighter V Ultra or Super or whatever they said that they weren't going to do with this game. But I see them eventually potentially doing a make good. So I think for that reason, it has to be cut from this list of it's a real stinker, but it's not the biggest disappointment this year.
Okay, well, we're not talking about potential here. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and cut it because we have 3 very strong contenders for biggest disappointment. We got to pick one of these. You know what? I'm going to give up on the No Man's Sky argument here because, I don't want to feel like the pressure and the weight of the internet falls upon my shoulders. Like, there are people that do enjoy this game, right? And for me, like, I didn't really buy into the hype. Like, I had to know, and I did buy the game shortly after launch. I did not pre-order it. Thank God. But, like, for me, like, I actually relaxed and enjoyed some aspects of that game. The part where it really broke down for me was how mundane the planets were, how little there was to do, how overwhelmingly weak I felt all the time. And the UI is just atrocious. I've never felt worse with an inventory system ever. Like, moving and combining materials, and you weren't sure how many slots you had, and you had to run back to your ship all the time to store things, and then your ship had limited inventory, and then you encountered all these creatures, and you have absolutely no idea, no direction, which I assume is the goal of the game, right? It's so you can explore aimlessly, but for some people, they're looking for that. They're not going to be disappointed for it. So on behalf of them, maybe it's not the biggest disappointment. For me, it was disappointing. But there were times where I did feel at peace. Like, I was relaxed and I felt absolutely in awe of, the space around me. Like, I remember quite distinctly leaving the first planet and, going into hyperspace to enter the next planet. And I was like, wow, this is what real life space must feel like. Like, outer space exploration is like the final frontier, and it created this overwhelming sense of emptiness that I did. It sounds cheesy, but it was a bit profound for me, like that moment. But then that was it. So, okay, it's not going to win this award. We're going to get it down to Star Fox Zero and Mighty Number 9. I'll leave it to you at that because I haven't played either of them. For me, I think you're leaning towards Mighty Number 9, aren't you?
Yes, I think Mighty Number 9 is the king of the poop pile.
Okay.
This game is bad.
All right.
It makes the source thing that inspired it look bad just by its mere existence. Mighty Number 9 is a bad game. Don't play Mighty Number 9.
You know what?
It's terrible.
And Keiji Inafune also apologized. He felt ashamed for this game.
Yeah, it's terrible. Mighty Number 9 is terrible. I would rather play any game on this list. I would rather play Star Fox Zero with like half of its terrible controls for how bad Mighty Number 9 is.
Wow.
It's a bad game. It's so bad that if you're so curious about it, I'd recommend checking it out for how bad it is for like $5. It is a terrible game. It's a terrible game.
Alrighty. Well, let's move on to some better categories. So for biggest disappointment of 2016, Mighty Number 9 takes it with runners-up Star Fox Zero and No Man's Sky. A dubious award. We can't give it a congratulations there.
Yeah, let's move on. Okay. Best mobile handheld game. Finally, a positive category. We have Warbits, Reigns, Final Fantasy Mobius, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, Fire Emblem Fates, Clash Royale, Pocket Card Jockey, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, Kirby Planet Robobo, Monster Hunter Generations, Picross 3D Round 2, Severed, and finally Pokemon Sun/Moon. Okay, so this category is games that you can play on your phone, on your 3DS, on your Vita. Where you play your games, these games go with you. And these are games that we can't stop playing on the commute, in bed, wherever you're not supposed to play games, you can play these games. All right, Taylor, you have more familiarity with this list than I do, particularly on some of these phone games. What would be your candidates?
Well, if I had to narrow it down to top 3, I'd have to say it's weird about this category because you have to pick between mobile, so you're talking about a phone or tablet, or a handheld, which is like, DS, 3DS, Vita, whatever. I don't know. I love Pokemon Sun and Moon, so that's got to be on the top 3. I'd fight for Picross 3D Round 2, but I don't think you're going to agree with me, so I'll leave it off. I don't know. I really love Reigns. I'll talk to you about why it's so innovative and charming. And I really liked Warbits, and that was another game that you reviewed. I also played as well. I think it did an excellent job in an Advance Wars, tactics battle style. To me, those are the top 3 here. Some of these other ones, I nominated quite a bit for this list. The Final Fantasy Mobius and Brave Exvius. Both of these games are freemium style games, and I kind of hate it for that. Like they're sort of my guilty pleasures. And Clash Royale, I also think falls in this category where they're addicting at first, but then you quickly hit that sort of ceiling, right? Where all of a sudden you feel compelled to dump money into it in order to advance, like in order to feel competitive. So we can cut those. That's my opinion on those games. Final Fantasy Mobius, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and Clash Royale. Did you play those?
I did. I played both the Final Fantasy games. I didn't play Clash Royale because I was afraid how much it would suck me in. Again, these are freemium style games. We awarded a freemium style game last year, this category, Final Fantasy Record Keeper, which is still a good game. But I think, frankly, that was a better game than both Mobius and Brave Exvius. Clash Royale, I think, is another one of those. It's like a good take on the Clash of Clans franchise, like I guess you could say. But frankly, I don't think a lot of people are still interested. And they did a lot to like abuse their player base with the chat icons and stuff. That
yeah,
I don't think qualifies it for this category. I concede that Picross 3D Round 2 is probably a game that you really like. It's probably going to be near your top 10 list. But I didn't play it, so I don't have a lot of investment in it. I think we can probably cut it from our site's overall best mobile handheld game category. All right, so the other games on this list, I played Fire Emblem Fates. I think Fire Emblem Awakening was a better game. This is a Fire Emblem game that's split into 3 separate games, and I actually think that did it a huge disservice. The most interesting one story-wise is Conquest, where you play as the quote-unquote bad guys who are more misunderstood. I think the characters in that version of the game are better. But then the other 2, Birthright, which is a little bit more easy experience for newcomers. The characters aren't as interesting, and Revelations, it's just like, why would you do that? I get that we got 3 separate Fire Emblem games because of that, but I would have preferred that be an entire package, and it just didn't do it for me. Some of the trappings around it, not good enough. I think Fire Emblem Awakening did that style of game better. I would fight for Pocket Card Jockey. I've kind of already stated another category why that game is fantastic. Let's cut Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. I think that is a great Mario & Luigi game. It's probably the first good game with Paper Mario in it for a long time. Paper Mario has had exactly 2 games that were very good. The original on the N64 and the GameCube 1000 Year Door. Super Paper Mario was okay, but not something different. Paper Mario Color Splash later on the Wii U, not a good game. The game that was released this year. Mario & Luigi Paper Jam is super fun and a very spirited RPG in the spirit of like a Super Mario RPG style RPG. I'm saying the word RPG a lot, but that's the kind of game this is. And it's very fun, very lighthearted, but there's things about it that I have some misgivings about, and I don't think a lot of people are going to check it out. So for that reason, let's cut it. Kirby Planet Robobo has the potential here to probably be one of the best platformers in a long time, and a really good Kirby game. but I didn't play it, so I don't have a lot to say about it. And I don't like to have arguments about games that I'm misinformed about. So I think because I haven't played it, I think we have to cut it.
I played it, and it was a strong platformer. It was very charming. It was very similar to a lot of older Kirby titles, though. So it's a little bit derivative. It doesn't do anything too new, but some of the new mechanics in there with these giant mechs in there are very fun and lighthearted. And I like what they did there, but I don't think it's going to win this category, or at least hit the top 3. So we'll cut it.
Okay, let's also cut Monster Hunter Generations. I really liked the I'm a now converted Monster Hunter fan officially, but I actually think the game prior to this that made the case for the 3DS that we actually awarded best handheld game last year was a better game than Generations. I think it's just too derivative. They didn't do enough for newcomers. The last game did a much better job with its tutorials. It has a lot more monsters in it, and I think some of the new monsters that they added are super fun. A lot of the loot is really stylish. Now you can play as the Palicos if you don't like the traditional hunter experience, but it doesn't do enough new stuff, and its controls are still kind of, I think, too complex for a lot of people. And I think for that reason we have to cut it. Okay. So we still have this on this list: Warbits, Reigns, Pocket Card Jockey, Severed, and Pokemon Sun and Moon. I think we can cut Severed. I think Severed is one of those games that originally came out on the Vita, and now has come out on other platforms. It's basically a game from the makers of Guacamelee, Drinkbox Studios. That's like Fruit Ninja. You slash.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe this game. It is Fruit Ninja. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has a very arresting style to it. Like it looks super fun.
What do you mean by arresting? You said that a lot this episode.
Yeah, so it's with Severed specifically, it has a very like Mayan Aztec look to it. It looks actually quite a bit like Guacamelee, very stylized. It looks neat. I know I'm using a lot of like similar style words, but you kind of have to see it to believe it. I just didn't check out the game, unfortunately. So if I had played the game, I'd probably discover that I'd probably like it quite a bit. But I don't like to have this argument about games I haven't played.
I'll tell you about it a little bit. It's not as deep as you'd like it to be. Like, it's a lot of like slashing and tapping and parrying. And that's pretty much it. Like, it's just not very deep, which makes it an excellent game that's optimized for mobile. Like, it was even better on the phone than it was on the Vita, in my opinion. And I think it's available for PC as well. I can't imagine trying to control that with a mouse, but whatever. I don't think it hangs as one of the top 3 this year, so I'm okay with cutting it.
Okay, I reviewed Warbits. I think Warbits is an interesting take on a game that I actually really love, Advance Wars. However, I gave it 3 stars. And I gave it 3 stars for the same. I feel the same way about it I did as I wrote in the review. I wish the campaign was a little bit longer in Warbits. I think some of the characters go too much off of the jokey, memey style thing that you can go one of 2 ways, and usually it goes pretty poorly. I think the multiplayer is surprisingly pretty seamless and works very well for a phone game. It has like a lobby system, which is like surprising. And I think fans of this genre are clamoring for this style of game. But when I sit and think about it, I think it's a game that's between 3 and 4 stars. And because we don't do half stars, I gave it 3 stars because I kind of lean more in that direction. I can see the argument more for these other 3 games over Warbits, frankly.
Oh, okay, I'll give it to you because I disagreed a little bit with your review because I wanted more Advance Wars, and that's what I got. And from that aspect, it doesn't do like I think the art direction I think is really cool. Like instead of like pure humans, they're like alien robot races, and the units are very cool. Like, it's very quirky, charming style to it. And these are the kinds of games that I think are best on phones and tablets. Like, it was just perfectly optimized for that. I often felt when I was playing games like Advance Wars or Final Fantasy Tactics, for example, and you're controlling the cursor on a D-pad, going through your units and moving them and acting just felt like a chore a lot of the time. As fun as the games could be, it was just obnoxious. And with these touch controls, I thought it was perfectly implemented. The multiplayer system I thought was very cool. You could create lobbies where you could find another private match by a hashtag, which I thought was very interesting. The multiplayer was very seamless. You could do it as like a turn-based thing, or you could pay attention to it closely and play very quick matches. I thought it was very, very cool. For me, I guess because of the fact that it's just too close to Advance Wars, perhaps it's not the overall winner of the category. So I'm okay with having Reigns, Pocket Card Jockey, and Pokemon Sun and Moon as our top three. I do want to cut this conversation short, though, because I think the runaway favorite here is Pokemon Sun and Moon.
Okay, well, I haven't played Reigns, so briefly explain to me what Reigns is. I've heard you talk about it before, but give me the elevator pitch on Reigns.
Well, it's very cool. I've never played a game like this before. It's like... Okay, how do I describe this? It's like Tinder with roguelike mechanics. So the overall game is just you literally swiping left and right. Sort of choose your own adventure story where you play a king. That's where the concept comes from, reigns, right? And you try to reign as long as possible. And the game has many, many different endings, and it's very easy to die, very difficult to survive, and rule forever as king, where you die of natural causes. And even then, if you try to reign as long as possible, you don't necessarily win the game, so to speak. All you've done is get another ending, another death ending. And what you're ultimately trying to do here is balance out meters, right? So you have meters based on your military, your religion or faith. I'm forgetting the other two categories. I think one is like the population, or your people, and the other one is like a mercantile ranking, like your money, like how you're handling your treasury. And what you do is you encounter different characters along the way that are advisors to you or are loyal subjects, and they ask you to make decisions, whether it's punishing the jester for performing a prank in the court, having the executioner kill him or spare him. And making one decision versus the other affects the meters in different ways. And what makes this game very cool, I think, is the way it surprises you. All of a sudden, you'll encounter these very surprise characters where they come out of nowhere and they sort of interrupt your story. As you keep playing the game, this happens more and more frequently, where you have sort of strange occurrences happening. And without giving too much away, I don't want to spoil it entirely, but it turns into this very bizarre story, and it lasts over multiple generations. So one story you encounter during one reign doesn't necessarily carry over to the next. But there's this overarching thread. Again, I don't want to spoil it because I highly recommend you pick up this game. Very, very fun on iOS and Android. I guess I should say my piece with it, because I don't think it's going to win this category, but you should definitely try this game out. I think it's a very strong contender, one of the best I played this year.
Okay, so I agree with you that Pokemon Sun Moon wins this category.
Well, that was easy.
But we should probably say a few words in its praise. So Pokemon Sun and Moon is full stop the best Pokemon game they've ever released.
I agree.
And I think because it has so many quality of life improvements, Pokemon is now a 20-year-old franchise that, if this was your first Pokemon game, this is an awesome thing for you. For fans like us who have been playing Pokemon games literally since we were kids, Pokemon Sun and Moon is refreshing. It's like a Hawaiian take on the universe. The new Pokemon are super fun. They're doing new redesigns of old Pokemon, which I also think are super fun. They've redone gym battles. They're now trials. They have mechanics in there that are they've never had in Pokemon games before. Everything that they've done in Pokemon, they've kind of reworked and retooled, and overall it makes the gameplay a lot more lighthearted, a lot more accessible, and just plain fun. This game is fantastic top to bottom. I love the online system. They've kind of fully realized the global trading system, the wonder trades, the online battling. You have kind of a plaza that you can go into whenever you want. There isn't this long tutorial that you have to go through, and it's just a fun Pokemon game. I really love the starters. There's not a negative thing I can think of when it comes to Pokemon Sun and Moon. I love the fact that now in battle, once you fought a specific Pokemon before, it'll actually show you what moves are super effective, not effective, or somewhat effective. And so you don't have to look up that like compatibility chart, which types are weak to others, because they've introduced lots of new types of Pokemon since the original release of Red and Blue. And it's just Pokemon Sun and Moon, soup to nuts, is the best Pokemon game they've ever released. And I liked quite a bit Pokemon X and Y. To me, those games, every Pokemon game progressively has gotten better and better and better. And this is kind of the apex of how good this franchise is. And Pokemon Go reinvigorated my interest in this. And I think a lot of people's interest in Pokemon Sun and Moon. And to my delight, Pokemon Sun and Moon is not just your average Pokemon game. It's the best thing that they've ever put out.
I totally agree. I really think all these quality of life improvements that you've already mentioned. There's one other one that I really, really, truly appreciated. For example, if you're out in the wild, you're out in the grass, and you encounter a random Pokemon, you catch it with a Pokeball. And normally what happens is if your party is full, if you already have 6 Pokemon in your party, that's it. Like that Pokemon gets sent to the box that you later have to go to the Pokemon Center and retrieve that Pokemon to put it in your party if you wanted to use them, right? This time around, if you catch a Pokemon in the wild, you have the option right there of swapping it with one of them in your party and send the one that you did have into the box. So I think that's a phenomenal, one of the amazing new features that have improved the overall Pokemon experience. Like, they've really streamlined it. The character redesigns, like it's a total fan service for those of us who've played the game with the original 151, with blue, red, and yellow versions. They redesigned those characters so they have like Alola forms, like a sort of Hawaiian reskins. I like them a lot. Like it brings old fans to the new. I really love what Pokemon Sun and Moon does. I'm having a great time with it. I'm going to continue playing it through the holidays. I'm looking forward to my vacation, playing it on the go. So congratulations, our best mobile or handheld game for 2016 to Pokemon Sun and Moon, followed by the runners-up Reigns and Pocket Card Jockey. Okay, I'm looking at the clock now, and I think we need to cut this short. So we're going to split this up into 2 episodes with our honors awards categories, right? So we read all of them up at the top, but we have remaining on our next episode. We have best new character, best gameplay moment, guilty pleasure of the year, biggest or most important news story, and worst trend to deliberate on next week's episode. So thanks again for listening to our part 1 of our Game of the Year honors. Thanks for sticking with us. Remember to listen and subscribe to our show, the 1P versus 2P podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, including iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn, Clamor, or just bookmark our website, 1pvs2p.com, where you can read our gaming blog there too.
A wrap-up of our awards thus far is available at the link in the show notes. We're going to have some summary of the winners, why we picked them, and the other contenders in the category. Don't forget to also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. We're very active there, at 1pvs2p_podcast.
As always, thanks to Phonetic Hero for letting us play his music for our show. Coffee Stomp and Super Manly Brothers X are those songs. Both of them are part of the compilation project Chip Tunes Equals Win. I'm Taylor Ray. That's my co-host Ryan Ray. Thanks for listening. See you next week for more of our Game of the Year deliberations.
But it is a crappy game. The game is crap. It made me angry.